Hi everyone, it's Michelle from Scrap Secrets and welcome to card number 20 in the Countdown to Christmas card series for 2020. Today we're going to be making this Christmas lantern card using two die sets from Honeybee Stamps. The two die sets are Winter Bouquet and Lantern Builder. Lantern Builder is from their latest release and Winter Bouquet is from last year, I believe. So I cut out two pieces from the Lantern Builder, the lantern and the little hook, and the rest of the images are cut out from that Winter Bouquet die set. Now I'm going to be showing you two different ways to add texture and depth and dimension to your die cuts. While you could leave these just like they are because they look cute, I like to go one step further and add distress oxides to bring out some of the embossed lines and also add some shading and depth and dimension. So right now I'm taking some vintage photo with a small makeup brush and pouncing the color onto the pine cone just to add a little bit of color and bring out those embossed lines. Now I'm using Walnut Stain to go around the edges of the pine cone, one on the left and one on the right, because they're going to be sitting on either side of the candle, and that's where the areas would be the darkest in my scenario. So again, just going back with the colors and blending them out until I get a good blend or a blend that I like. Distress oxides blend very easily, and it doesn't take very much work to get them to pop. Now, if you look, I think that they look really, really good. Much better than if you just used the paper cutouts, but you could completely do that. Next thing I'm going to do the same thing with the center of the poinsettia and the flames using Fossilized Amber. So just pouncing it on with my cottontail blending brush from the Rabbit Hole Designs, which I love. These blending brushes are amazing. And then I'm going to wipe my surface off and now start with the poinsettias. So here's the second way that I add texture and depth and dimension. I use markers. You don't have to use Copic Markers, but I decided to. And this is R89, and I'm going over the embossed lines in the image. I just think it makes it really, really stand out. So these pieces of pattern paper, well, these pieces of cardstock are, the one we're working on now is a pattern paper from my scraps, and the other one is also from my scraps. So this one is a red with a subtle polka dot pattern on it, and it's a very thin paper, but I really liked it. And I think that you really can't even see, you can see the dots in the middle, but once you run it through your embossing machine or your Cuttlebug or your Gemini Junior or whatever is your cutting machine, you're never going to notice the pattern. So when you guys are picking out papers, if there's a very subtle pattern and you're not sure how it's going to work, try it out, because you really can't even tell. I mean, the pattern is going to be covered up on here. You would never know that it was a piece of pattern paper that I used. So now I'm doing the same thing with the shinier image and using R46. With this is a slippery paper, but the marker does not come off, which I was I wasn't sure how that was going to work. The marker doesn't come off. I was going to put ink on top of these. However, I think the ink would come off on your fingers on the top one, so that's why I didn't do that. But you can do that, and you'll see that I do both of these techniques when we work on the candle. So I'm now putting the poinsettia together using my MFT On Point Precision Glue and just gluing the piece together. And then once that's all glued together, I'm actually going to lift up the leaves of the poinsettia, make it curl up a little bit to give it, again, a little bit more of a 3D look. And then I'm going to put that to the side and we're going to work on the candle. So here's where I do both techniques. We're going to use RG23 for the line on the candle. And you can see just adding that makes it almost look like it's 3D. And now we're going to go in with YG13 and color in the top of the candle. I'm going to use some Distress Oxide and Twisted Citron to go around the edges. And it's basically the same color as the cardstock, but it does give it, you can see it there, it does give it a little bit of shading, which I didn't want a ton of it. And then I also go over the top a little bit to kind of tone that down. But you can see right there, it looks kind of 3D. I'm wiping off my work surface, and I'm going to use a micron pen to draw in the wick. And now we're going to get ready to put the flame on here. Now, I just picked one of the pieces, and it was very hard to glue it on because it's only a very tiny bit. I covered up some of the wick when I put this on here. If you're gluing it down to a piece of paper, so if you're going to glue it onto your background, it's much easier because you can put the glue right to the background. So this one has a shorter flame than it normally would have. But now I'm just putting it together just to see how it's going to all look. And I had such, I don't know, it's such a difficult time trying to figure a layout for this card. I go back and forth, and you'll see me about 1,000,000 times go back and forth and trying to add things, take things out. So here we go. Now I'm using some excess packaging to cut out a layer to go behind the lantern, because lanterns aren't see-through. They have that glass on it, so there's going to be a little bit of reflection. But I thought if I put vellum on there, it would be too much of blocking it out. So I found this scrap piece of, it's not acetate, it's just packaging. It's actually packaging from the Create and Inkspire kit from their pattern paper pack. And I'm going to be gluing it down using my ATG. Now I thought that I measured it out right, but I didn't. There's excess, and I'll have to cut some of that off. So either I can't measure or cut straight, or both. Now we're using some chipped sapphire distress oxide to go around the edges of the lantern. This doesn't really show that much. I probably should have used black soot, but you would have to use a really, really light hand, and I'm not great at that. So I just decided to use the chipped sapphire. Now I'm using my ATG for the top and the bottom, and then being very careful because the strips on the side are very, very narrow. They're more narrow than the glue, so I just want to make sure that it doesn't hang over the edge. I'm going to place my acetate or my packaging on there, and I don't get it straight. I get some bubbles, and then I pull up the tape, so I was kind of a mess with this. So I'm going to put it back on and then move on to the next sections of the card. So I just wanted to talk about the card for a minute. Obviously, we're walking through it, but tell you why I chose the colors that I did, because they are not typical Christmas colors. I am part of a card swap. There's a card swap group over on Facebook where there's at least one swap a month, and you make two cards for somebody, send them one that you can write in and write about yourself, and then one that goes along with the theme. So this month is Christmas, and I asked my person if they celebrate Christmas, and she does, and she said that she is in Seahawk territory, so she likes blue and green, because I asked what colors she likes. Does she like traditional Christmas colors or, non-traditional? So this was the closest I had to Seahawks colors, so I hope that she likes it, and that's why this is kind of a non-traditional. I wouldn't normally do that type of green candle for this project, but that's why. So I will leave the information to the Facebook group in the more information section below if you guys want to go over and check it out and do some card swaps. So you can see here, I'm really, really torn. Again, I was just going over and trying to figure out the layout. Now I'm going to commit to it, put some ATG on the candle and put that in, turn it over and make sure that looks okay. So I didn't want the flame to be right on the top and you barely be able to see it after all that work. Now I'm going to go in and try to figure out where the pine cones are going to go, which one's going to go in the front, which one's going to go in the back. Again, I was so unsure of this whole thing. And then I go to put the pine cone down and I forget that base is there, and I put it down too far so that you basically don't see any of it. So what was the point of that? And then I pick it up and I rip it. Don't worry, we can cover that with some Distress Oxide, and that's exactly what I do. I wanted to move it up a little bit, but I'm going to actually take it off and run some of the Distress Oxide over it. You're never going to know. You can't even tell. If you didn't see me do that, you never would have known. So now I'm going to put some MFT On Point Precision Glue on this pine cone and glue it to the candle. I completely could have used ATG. I don't know why I used MFT glue. No, there's no shade in using the glue. I just don't know why I used a liquid glue when I'm working on something that will show the glue if it gets out. But I did. So now I'm using some more of that MFT On Point Precision Glue and putting the poinsettia down. And I don't realize until later that bottom leaf is below the bottom of the lantern, and that's not going to work. So we'll figure that out in a minute. I tried to move it, but it was already glued down, so I kind of just lifted the petals up a little bit. The problem with that is that the card is almost exactly 5.5 tall. So it was kind of hanging off the bottom of the card, and the card won't stand. So there I was, I added too much that liquid glue, and I had to scrape it off with my cutting knife. Okay, so now I took a piece of vellum that's going to go behind it because it looked too plain when I put it up to the white cardstock. And I'm using some Fossilized Amber and squeezed lemonade to make it glow. I thought this was a creative solution to being able to see the background right through it, because this would actually be a 3D image, so you wouldn't see the background. You would have, like, when obviously the candle is lit, so you would have a glow to the back of it, but I didn't want anything that would impede. You can still see through it. So I didn't want to be able to completely see through it, but I didn't want it to impede anything. So I think vellum is the perfect choice for this, or at least I think so. So now I'm trying to figure out, I think the flame looks a little bit too plain and not, it wasn't enough. So I'm going to take some of this lacquer pen from Hero Arts in yellow and go over the flame and let it dry. I'm going to use, this one was tough. I probably, again, should have left it in the paper, but it was already popped out. And I'm going to put it off to the side to let that dry, and then we're going to glue it on top of the other flame. So I can't put that piece on until the flame dries, but I just wanted to see how everything would look together, and I was loving the way this was coming out. So now, I thought the poinsettia looked a little plain, so I cut out 2 of the leaves. This is actually the same leaf, and then just did the same thing with G09 and went over the leaves. I also went over it with a little bit of twisted citron to tone it down a little bit, because I think the color that I picked for the embossing was a little bit too bold, but you can see here just that little bit of twisted citron made it die down a little bit. So if you see, I have the shaker pack over to the side. I was going to be brave and make a shaker card, and at last minute, I chickened out. Yeah, it would be beautiful as a shaker card, and I think that I might try it again. I don't know why I chickened out. I have this thing where I just kind of freak out over shaker cards. I don't know. I've never made one, and I just have this fear about it. Once I make one, I'm probably going to love it, and that's all I'm going to want to make. But for some reason, I don't know. I don't know what my issue is. So there you see, I'm putting it on the card base, and I think it looks very, very blah. So I'm trying to figure out what to do while that flame dries. So I went through my paper stash and found it was like the Nutcracker Ballet paper pack from Michaels, and just cut this piece out to fit the front. I initially had it done so there was a white border around it, and I didn't like that at all. So now I'm putting it on there, and I really like that. I like the snowflakes in the background. I think it gives a little bit more interest, and it was competing too much with the white without the background. So now I'm going to put the flame on top. I used some Zig 2-way glue pen, but this glue pen is like dead. It only has like the white glue left in it. So I think I go back in with MFT on point. Yep. Precision glue, and put a little teeny tiny bit of glue down, and then put that flame on top. It was not completely dry, but it was dry enough that it wasn't going to impede anything. So now we are going to get ready to put the vellum on the back of it. So again, using my ATG very carefully around the sides, and then on the top and the bottom, putting the line down, and then lining it up with the vellum and placing the vellum on the back. There was just like a little black dot on there. It was like a piece of glue that wouldn't come off. So I did the Fossilized Amber right around the candle, and then made it fade out a little bit because the glow would dissipate the further away you got from the candle. So now I'm just putting some ATG on the back of the whole entire thing and sticking it down to the card base. I put it a little bit too much to the left, but beggars can't be choosers, you know? It is what it is. And then the last thing that I did was I took some of the glossy accents and went over the handle to make it look like the handle was like silver. So that's basically it for, I go back in with my cutting tool and just pop some of the bubbles. Again, you could have flicked it from the back. But that's the card for the day. I hope that my swap partner likes this card. I really had fun making it. And here's 2 close-up cards. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have comments or questions, please feel free to leave them below. Hit the subscribe button if you're not a subscriber, and I'll see you again in the next video.